Welcome, Sean.
Hello, Jalal.
How you doing?
I'm great, thanks. How are you doing?
Not too bad.
It's great to see you, by the way.
Oh, thanks. It's a pleasure.
Nice shades.
Here's my heart. Thank
Spring
you.
must be in the air.
Exactly. You got it. Welcome, guys. Today, as Sean just said, spring is in the air and baseball's here, right?
Full swing.
When spring's here, baseball's here. And Sean, as you guys know, is a huge fan of baseball. I think you live for baseball. I can't remember if it's baseball or love.
Is this being recorded?
It's being recorded.
Love.
Okay, gotcha. Understood. But yeah, Sean, baseball. You in the past you've said that baseball's a lot like life.
It is. I do believe it's a lot like
yesterday's opener. The pitching wasn't the greatest, or the opening pitcher. It was
okay.
But
it was okay.
That's markets. And
No,
that's life.
he
right?
kind of grinded it out.
Yeah,
Alec Manoah. He grinded it out, but we still won 9-3, and it was just fun to see the home opener.
From my condo, I can hear people chanting and people cheering. It's pretty damn awesome.
I wasn't there in person, but I have seen opening games in the past, and they're quite the event to go to.
Gotcha. All right, guys. Well, coming up next, that's what we're talking about: baseball and life. Welcome back, folks. Baseball and life. Sean, what do you got for us today?
Well, baseball is a lot like life. And
how so? Tell me.
Well, okay. I'll give you an example. Right. Unlike any other professional sport, the baseball regular season is a long one. Now, you got to put this in perspective. Baseball goes through spring training. That's 32 games. And that's usually held between, let's say, mid-February to the end of March.
Yep.
They play 32 games. Then they have to play 162 games after that, beginning in or around the end of March, early April, going right through the summer. Most of the games are played outdoors in a lot of venues that are or a lot of locations that are really, really hot. They have to play almost every day. They rarely get days off. They may get 3 or 4 days off a month. And then once they get through,
I know they got to play every day,
but someone has to do it. And then at the end of it, you if you're lucky enough, you basically make the postseason, and then you go from playing in scorching hot environments to cold environments. If you're playing, for instance, in a city like New York or Philadelphia or what may have you, you're playing in cool, cold environments, and typically the postseason lasts another month, where you're playing to the end of October or sometimes in early November.
Okay.
And what's important about that is it is a long season. Any one game doesn't necessarily matter relative to the girth of the whole season. Even a stretch of 2 or 3 or 4 games.
The girth of the whole season, not one game actually make affects it that much. How many games did you say there
162.
were? 162.
And here's the frustrating thing about baseball as it compared to, for instance, like the NFL. Like the NFL plays how many games? Like 17?
17.
17 before the end of the playoffs. Yeah. And in an NFL season who the good teams are. Mm-hmm. You know who the bad teams are.
Yep.
Bad teams in the NFL are probably going to win.
You can tell where the good quarterbacks are. That's where
they're going to be good teams, right?
Exactly.
And you know that the good teams are going to win 12, 13, 14 games out of the 17. The bad teams are going to win maybe 3 to 5 games out of the 17.
Yeah.
The frustrating thing about baseball is a really bad team is still going to win 40% of their games. And a really good team, I'm talking like almost a historically good team, is going to win 60% of their games.
Why?
And an average team is going to win half their games. So in any given game, who wins and who loses is almost a coin flip. It's a little better than that. Like, for instance, a team that has a 600 winning percentage, it means they win 6 games out of 10. They might win in any given game 54, 55% of the games.
Pretty much half. Almost like
it's a coin flip. It's almost a coin flip. And it's a frustrating thing for a fan if you measure every game on the strength of its individual game. Mm. And so you have to take a longer term perspective where over time, the better teams show up as being the better teams and the bad teams show up being the bad teams.
But over a longer stretch of time.
Longer stretches of time.
Not in a shorter period of time. Damn, I wonder how betting then or betting in the major league works then. How are you supposed to bet?
My personal perspective on that,
you
have to be cuckoo to bet a baseball game. Like, really. Like, people do it,
but it's
and
fun.
I get it. It's fun as long as you see it as such. But in any given outcome, we'll get into this in a moment, you're going to fail like 40 to 60% of the time.
Okay. And
we'll talk about that in a minute. But back to the long regular season, and this kind of leads to this is kind of like life, is that really good teams can look really bad for long stretches of time, and really bad teams can look really good for long stretches of time. Oh my God. And then both can look really middling for long stretches of time. Oh, and I'll give you an example.
No consistency.
There is over the long term, but in the short run, it can be maddening because good teams lose. And to your point, it's like, why?
Yeah.
You can't really point to anything, one thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
I'll give you an example. The Philadelphia Phillies last year were National League champions.
Mm-hmm.
They made it to the postseason. They beat, I think, the Cardinals in the wild card round. Then they beat the Atlanta Braves, which are a very good team. They are this year, too, in the division series. And then they went out and beat the stuffing out of the Padres in the championship series. And then they ultimately lost to the Houston Astros, in the World Series. But if you actually looked at the Phillies at the end of May, you would have thought they're going nowhere. Like, I guess in April, for instance, I think they lost 8 games out of 10 coming out of the gates.
Jeez,
8 games out of 10. I think there were 5 games under 500 at the end of April.
Yeah.
In May, they scuffled. And by the end of May, I wrote it down here. I think they were 21-29 by the end of May. Like they're 8 games under 500, which is a big record deficit at, to be 2 months into the season.
Yeah.
But by the end of August, they did some things. They fired the manager,
July,
hired
August,
a
3
Canadian
months.
as manager, and did some changes here and there. And by the end of August, they're 73-58 en route to basically making
73-58.
73.
So why? Like, is there no, I don't know, rational explanation? Did they get in other players? Like, what happened with?
You can point to any number of things. I mean, they fired Joe Girardi was the manager at the time, and they hired a gentleman. I can't recall his name, but a gentleman from Montreal actually to be their manager, and he's a very good, solid manager. And I guess the morale turned around, and they started hitting the pitching. Obviously, this is Captain Obviously, the pitching improved and so forth.
Yeah.
But it's the baseball gods. It's like things turn around for them, and they made it all the way to the World Series. But had you looked at them at the end of this month of April last year, you would have said they're going nowhere. Which leads me to the another example, which is like you look at the Washington Nationals.
Mm-hmm.
Last year they were a historically bad team.
Mm-hmm.
So by comparison, I think the Phillies won 87 games. I think the Atlanta Braves won somewhere around 95 games last year. The Nationals playing the same division as them, they won 55 games out of 162.
Well, less than half, much less than half.
Yeah, they suck.
Yeah,
that's a 35%.
I think Washington sucks in like every sport.
Yeah, they do. but right now they do. But a 35% winning percentage. I said the bad teams lose 40% of the time. That's even bad for a bad team.
That's even worse. Yeah.
But last year they went on, I think, 5 different occasions where they had three game winning streaks or longer.
Yeah.
Against good teams. They beat the Dodgers. They beat the Mets. They beat the Braves.
What?
And they're a crappy team.
Really?
Yeah.
Do they have at least one good player? Like, is that it? Like, is baseball? So here's to give you some context here, Sean.
Yeah.
I grew up playing some baseball, like just recreationally, but I was more into watching like the NFL, hockey, and in my later years, my later teens, I started watching basketball. But other than that, I'm not really too versed. Definitely not as much as you in the major league. But in some of the sports like NFL and like the NBA, having one awesome player, aka like look at the Lakers, right, with their Kobe, even with the Bulls back in the day with Jordan, although Pippen was there as well, but Jordan. But in a lot of sports, having one amazing player will turn the tide around. For your sake. Yep. Is the MLB like that?
No, actually, it's funny. So the thing you mentioned the NBA, if you have like one great player like LeBron James, or if you have
the NFL, like if you have an awesome quarterback, right,
you can win a lot of games on the back of a quarterback. It's probably the most important position in sports, arguably, right?
Yep, I agree.
Baseball's not like that. You can have like I'll use the Anaheim Angels as an example. They have on their team 2 generational players. Mike Trout, who's arguably been the best player in the major leagues for the last 10 years. Mike Trout.
Yep.
He didn't play much last year, but just an amazing player. And then they have right now this player Shohei Ohtani, who's he might be the best athlete, period, in sports.
Really
incredible. I mean, to put it in perspective, so Shohei Ohtani last season, Mike Trout was actually injured a lot of last season, but when he played, he was actually pretty dominant.
Yeah.
Shohei Ohtani last season as a pitcher was 15-9 with a 2.33 ERA.
ERA just
earned run average. So on average, every 9 innings, opponents can only score a little over 2 runs on him.
Okay.
He can throw 100 miles an hour. His fastball's 100 miles an hour. His slider's devastating. His changeup, like he throws a devastating array of pitches. He's a glorious pitcher to watch. Just on that alone, he's a top 10, maybe 15 player in baseball, just on his pitching alone.
Okay.
But then he also played left field, and he, as a hitter, he averaged 273, hit 34 home runs, 95 RBIs, like runs batted in, 95 stakes. And then he had an OPS, which is an on-base plus slugging percentage, which is an indication of how often you get on base and how hard you hit the baseball.
Yeah.
Like Shohei Ohtani is not a guy that just slaps, singles all over the place and just like, jogs the first, and that's all he does. Yeah. He barrels the baseball. Like kills it. He barrels it. I love that. So he is dominant on the defensive side of the ball
the offense.
and the offensive side of the ball. So he's a top 10 to 15 players a pitcher, top 10 to 15 players a hitter. He does both.
Okay.
No one's done that since Babe Ruth.
Okay.
And he's good. So,
and he's with Anaheim.
Yep. Okay. And you look at Mike Trout, again, arguably he's been a top 10 finalist for the American League MVP for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
Not last year, again, he was injured, but every year before that. How did the Anaheim Angels do last year? Well, they were 73 and 89.
Jeez.
They did not have a win.
With two of the best players, according to Witchers, and two of the best players in 73 and 189.
Yep, 73 and 89. So they did not have a winning.
73 and 89.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, they didn't have a winning record.
Okay.
And they had arguably two of the best players, actually not arguably, the best player in baseball, and arguably another top 5 player in baseball on their team.
Wow.
Now, the Cleveland Guardians, on the other hand, which Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro were formerly of, now they're the general manager and president of baseball operations here, they were 92 and 70. And I could challenge a number of baseball fans to name 3 players on that team.
This is Cleveland what?
This is the Cleveland Guardians, formerly of the Indians.
All right.
No one even know how, I can't even name more than maybe 2 players on their team. Okay.
Right.
And they had a 92 and 70 record, the same as the Blue Jays.
How does that happen with Anaheim in 70 something and 89, 73 and 89?
Because baseball, and again, a lot like life, a lot like investing, you
Yeah.
can't just build it off 1 or 2 or 3 players. So if you look at the NBA at any given time, you have 5 players on the floor for one team, 5 players on the floor for another team.
Yeah.
Okay. So one player, if they're dominant enough, can take over a game and literally lead a team to win.
Oh, yeah, because one player is 20% of his team.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But at any given time, you can only have in baseball one guy at the plate hitting.
Yeah.
Okay.
One guy offense. Yeah.
Yeah. And you got 9 players in the field and a pitcher. That's all you got.
Ah, that is a good distinction, actually. It's pretty much at any given time, it's like 1 against 9 kind of thing.
Yeah, like Mike Trout is a phenomenal center fielder when healthy, or Kevin Kiermaier this year for the Blue Jays, when healthy, phenomenal center fielder. But if the ball ain't hit to him, he ain't doing much.
Good point.
And if he's not at the plate, he ain't doing much. So, you need, in a baseball team, it's 26 players. Those are the players that are on your roster sitting around in the bench or starting the baseball game for you. But you also even need more than that. You need guys down in the minors. Yeah. They call them depth guys to cover for injuries, or let's say someone has to leave for parental leave or something like that off the main roster. You need these guys to come in and fill spots. You need 5 starters. You need 8, 7 or 8 relief pitchers. You need infielders and outfielders, people that can bat left, people that can hit right, left-handed pitchers, right-handed pitchers. So no one player can be good enough to dominate. In any one game, one player can do it, but no one can do it for a stretch of time because of the nature of the game, except for one player who can actually do it, which is Shohei Ohtani. he can actually go out and pitch 7 innings, a 3-hit ball, and then turn around to the other side of the plate, hit 2 home runs, and drive in 6. So he can do that, but there's no one else in baseball that can do that.
Yeah. So other sports, Sean, are like like NBA. I would say is quite. Although one player can tip the favor or tip the scales in favor of his team, but there's a lot of, I would say, team strategies in other sports. Is that the same? And in life, obviously, there's strategies. Is that the same in baseball? Because like from what you're saying, 1 against 9, right? In the offense level, like suppose a team that's on offense has to bat, and then you have the pitching team, the defensive team. They have 9 people out there. It's almost like I don't want to say single player sport game, but kind of sounds like it.
That's the beauty of baseball. It's both. It's a one-on-one matchup between the pitcher and the hitter. Yeah. But then you have a team behind you that fields for you. And then there's also,
but the offense is screwed because the offense can't do anything. It's just literally that one batter.
Yep.
Oh God.
Yep.
That's totally like life. It's just like you against the world.
It kind of is a little bit.
Or like in
that
investing,
moment.
it's like you against the damn market.
And that's the thing, right? And then the problem with the market is that there's all sorts of information reflected in the market at any given time. Well, that's not anything different with baseball. There's so much information on every player in baseball. The analytics in the last 25 years, as it relates to baseball, has just grown exponentially in terms of what they know about a hitter's tendencies, what they know about a pitcher's tendencies, what they know about a fielder's tendencies.
I was just going to ask you. So yesterday, when we were having a chat about this topic, you mentioned that pitchers actually will get the research done, like not them, but I guess from their team as to every batter. Yep. Right. Yep. Where's his weak spot, and they're going to try to drill that weak spot
exploit it. Absolutely.
And the pitchers are trained at every possible weak spot for an individual.
Not everyone.
But the top pitchers would be.
Actually, all the pitchers are trained to know the weak spots of the most dangerous hitters. So if you play on a team and you're like number 1 through 6 hitter, most pitchers have a game plan for that. Because those are the best hitters typically on a team. You basically have your best hitters hit at the top of the lineup, so they get the bat more times.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So most pitchers are game planning for those guys. The weaker people at the end of the lineup, for the most part, not all the time, but for the most part, they're not as game planned as much because simply put, they're at the bottom of the lineup for a reason. They're not as good as the other guys.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So you basically a good pitcher will pitch to the number 9 hitter and just basically throw their best stuff and you know try and hit it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Versus the guy who's at the top of the order or the number 2 or 3, like Vladdy Guerrero comes to the plate. They're not just ripping their best stuff because Vladdy can hit it. So they actually game plan and try to get Vladdy to drive the ball into the ground or strike out and so forth. Very different approach to how they might, you know, pitch to Kevin Biggio or something like that. I mean, not to knock Kevin Biggio. He's a good hitter, but he's not Vladdy Guerrero.
Gotcha. So you're talking now strategies on how to organize your lineup and stuff like that, and put the good guys up front, less good guys in the back. To relate it back to life and investing and markets and all that stuff, it's kind of like portfolio diversification. That's what I'm hearing. Portfolio management, scaling. I don't know.
You want to be patient. You have to be patient when investing.
Yeah.
You know, in the short run, you can look stupid for the right reasons. I mean, that's just the way investing is. Like, you know, and at the end of the day,
you can make all the right decisions and still come out wrong, I guess.
And you can also look really good for the wrong reasons, right? Now, like I won't tell you that if you own a portfolio of 20 companies, that one company can make or break your whole year. I mean, if you have one company that, you know, increases tenfold in a year, well, that's going to obviously affect your results in any given year, right? That can happen. Yeah. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen.
But it can happen. Just like in baseball, it can happen.
It can happen. But in, you know, in general, you need a well put together, well thought out 20, 25 positions or however you're comfortable with. I mean, the benefits of diversification somewhat diminish apparently once you cross 15 to 17 positions. But nonetheless, you need it to be complementary and you want to be diversified because in the end of the day, you just don't know day to day what's going to happen. But you know over time that things should work out and your portfolio should appreciate meaningfully. Just like in baseball, you don't know at any one game what's going to happen. But overall, over the long stretch, if you're a good team, you're a good team. Right. And right? To give you a comparison, if you're a general manager and you're constructing a baseball roster, you could theoretically line up just heavy bats, like great offense at the expense of good pitching. You're not going to win many baseball games because your pitchers are going to give up a pile of runs on the other side. And what if you go through a streak where your hitters just aren't hitting? You're done, especially in a playoff series. So you have to have a balance of, defensive players, good pitching. You need guys that can strike people out, guys that can induce ground balls so that you can get double plays and so forth. And you need people that can hit. Yeah. But you can't focus on just like, for instance, the greatest starting 5 pitchers in all of baseball, and then you have nothing else. Because baseball teams will know that. They'll pick up on that. They'll exploit your weakness, and you'll lose more than you win. And they can easily exploit, I guess, on the defensive side. Like, even if you have an awesome pitcher, but if your defense can't catch that's right. Not, completely off topic off of investing, but back into baseball and sports and everything. What do you think is more important? Maybe it could actually relate to life and investing. Defense or offense in sports? They're both important. I know. I've played sports. They're both awesome. Yeah. But because you're saying like, what if a general manager just hires like, top 5 pitchers or top 5 defensemen on their team or for their team, but then they ignore the offense side, for example. Well, if any of these top 5 or top 10 can't bat can't bat well, well, then, they're going nowhere. They're not going to get any home runs. However, in defense or in sports, like one of my coaches in grade 11 told me, you can't lose if you don't get scored on. Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. I mean, if I had to skew, what's more important, defense versus offense, I probably skew 55 defense, 45 offense. And the reason for this is this. If you have amazing pitching and strong defense, that is more predictable than offense. And here's why. Especially on the offensive side of the baseball, or on the baseball diamond, baseball's built around failure. Okay, not many sports are like that. Like, I'll give you an example. Aaron Judge last year basically failed at the plate almost 60% of the time. 6 out of 10 times he came to the plate, he would fail. He would not reach base. Right. Okay. And he failed his way to the American League Most Valuable Player Award and a 9-year, $360 million contract. Because he ended up hitting 62 home runs. He ended up batting over 300. And he had an OPS, like an on-base plus slugging, of over 1,000. Actually, over 1,100. That means he was just smoking the ball every time he hit it, right? Yeah. But, okay, he still failed 60% of the time. Now, by comparison, Shohei Ohtani, I mentioned he was 15-9, okay, and he failed about 40% of the time, and he was still an amazing pitcher. So, great pitchers will likely lose probably 30 to 50% of their starts. great hitters are probably going to fail somewhere around 60 to 65% of the time.
Okay, so when you're on, the from what I understood, defense less probability of failing.
Less
right?
probability.
Less
it's
probability.
more predict. It's a little more predictable.
I like the concept that you mentioned of predictability, right? Especially when you tie it in with what you just said, that baseball is a sport of failure, right?
Yeah.
As compared to others.
Yeah.
So I mean, predictability is.
Well, let me give you an example. Sorry, but can you imagine if pick a quarterback, right? Like Josh Allen.
Okay.
Can you imagine Josh Allen if he was only successful on 40% of the plays he executed on the field, let alone passing percentage or completion percentage, or just 40% of the time he was successful? He wouldn't be playing in the NFL.
No,
like if LeBron James or any NBA player miss 60% of their shots, they're not playing in the NBA.
No,
but that's baseball. And that was an elite player who won the most valuable player award last year. Failed 60% of the time.
Jeez. Well, if LeBron was missing that, he'd definitely not be getting 6 rings, or I think he's at 6 or 7 rings, but definitely close to that. But yeah, so going back with failure, predictability, so the markets are filled with that, right? Like we're always trying to predict what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
How do you relate what you just what you just said about baseball and about being on defense or I don't want to say defensive, but the defensive side of baseball is more predictable than the offense side. How does that relate to life or in investing and
the best way I can explain that is good pitchers, for instance, tend to be good pitchers for a long period of time. Good hitters tend to be decent hitters for a long period of time. So in other words, if you look at the back of their baseball card and you look at their results, that's a decent predictor. Not all the time, by the way. We have a pitcher like that on our staff. But it's a decent predictor of what they're going to do in the future. Okay. Well, it's the same with a company. Like if you look at certain companies and their history of success and profitability, they don't often grow stupid overnight. Okay, so they're going to do, their share price might not reflect it in the short term, long season. But over time, companies that are profitable in the past will likely continue to be profitable in the future. Companies
so just like teams that are profitable in the past, like baseball teams that are profitable or they have an awesome track record, there's a high predictability or there's a high chance or a better chance in the future that they're still going to be good teams. Yeah,
like I'll give you an example in Major League Baseball. I call them the Borg. From the Borg of baseball from Star Trek Next Generation. Remember that cube that used to float around in space and chase the Enterprise around? Anyway, I call the Tampa Bay Rays the Borg of baseball because they are every year they spend nothing on their team. They have all like they're analytic demigods. They're a frustrating team to watch. But somehow every year on a shoestring budget they find some pitcher or some athlete to come out of nowhere and just beat the snot out of the Blue Jays.
Because who doesn't want to play for in Tampa Bay? Like it's an awesome thing. Maybe that's why
they can't even draw flies to their diamond. Anyway, and yet here they are. The start of this year, they're 11-0. They're off to the best start in like 50 years in Major League Baseball. A pain in the butt team they are.
See, and you're making fun of the analytic guys. Anyway. the analytic demigods.
Yeah, and they're coming to Toronto in the next couple of days. And anyway,
it's gonna be good.
Started. So like companies that are good, if they have a track record of strong management, if they have a track record of basically building great products that people need and use and so forth, the odds are that's going to continue over time.
Gotcha. So predictability and less chance of failure, or sorry, let's just say maybe less failure in the past. There's a higher chance that there's going to be less failure in the future.
It doesn't mean it can't happen.
Of course. Yeah. Just like you just said, like I really like that about baseball. That it's almost like a coin toss.
Any given day. The markets are like that. Yeah. I think the stats are on any given day in the markets. I think the markets will be up 50.5% of the time, and the markets will be down 49.5% of the time.
In normal days. Nowadays, it looks like it's always down, but it's getting better.
It's getting better, right?
I get you. Yeah.
So, and I think, the one thing that I love about baseball is to enjoy the ride. It is a long season. Don't overweight one game or one series versus another. Understand that, again, the frustrating part about baseball is the crappiest teams are still going to beat the best teams 30 to 40% of the time. And for me personally, there's nothing better than, it's a nice summer day, and I'm working around the house. I'm doing whatever I'm doing and I have the baseball game on in the background. It's just such a relaxing way to spend an afternoon. You're doing some stuff and accomplishing stuff and in the background, the beautiful games being played.
Yeah. It is fun. I don't really watch baseball too much on TV. I will if, there's nothing else to do, but I do love, just heading over to the Rogers Center sometimes and, just watching a game. It's a fun experience for sure. Right?
Yeah. And just keep the perspective, keep the long-term perspective and understand too. Now, this is not like investing, if you're, if you own quality type holdings and you let the long term take hold for it, you will be successful as time goes on. If history is any indication of the future, Baseball, you got to realize that there's only one team that's going to win the last game of the year. Only one team. And, like Moneyball, there's a great book by Michael Lewis called Moneyball, and it was turned into a movie starring Brad Pitt.
I was just going to say, I thought it was the movie. Okay, I didn't know it was. Okay,
it was
so
a book
based on
first, and then
awesome movie.
Aaron Sorkin turned it into a bit of a baseball allegory. It was a great movie, and Billy Beane and chasing that final win of the year, right? Yeah. And that's what the whole movie's built on. Only one team can do it. So maybe this is the year for the Blue Jays, maybe not, but I'm going to certainly enjoy it.
Let's hope so. Toronto guys, Blue Jays all the way.
Go Jays.
Thanks a lot, guys. All right. See you guys next time.